Hey everyone, welcome to day 4 of the MainStage starter course. Today's a really important lesson. Now, if you've missed any of the previous lessons, especially lesson 3 or lesson 2, then you're going to want to scroll down on this page and review those 2 videos first before you watch today's video, because we're going to tie the concepts from lesson 2 and lesson 3 together today when we talk about how you can make sure that your MainStage rig is reliable for live performance. This is what MainStage is the best at. It's what MainStage is designed to do, is be used for live performance. But you want to make sure that your live rig is actually going to be reliable and trouble-free, because you don't want to be worrying your computer's going to crash or that something's going to go wrong during a live performance. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff today, and we're also going to talk about how you can stay organized, because MainStage lets you customize pretty much everything about your concert. It's really important that you know how MainStage has the file structure set up so that you're not saving files all over the place and then wasting time later trying to find work that you've already done. I'm going to show you a simple system that MainStage encourages you to use but doesn't explain, so that you'll know how to save your files quickly and then access them reliably later on. So I'm going to turn around and we're going to go to a screen share. This is going to be a great lesson. Let's take a look. Hey everyone, this is lesson 4 of the MainStage starter course. And today we're going to bring together the concepts that we talked about in the previous 2 lessons. If you haven't already watched lesson 2 or lesson 3, just scroll down on this page, check out what you missed. In lesson 2, we talked about channel strips and how they produce audio and how you can place channel strips within patches. Then yesterday in lesson 3, we talked about the 2 steps necessary to control a parameter on a channel strip, whether it's volume or the amount of an effect from your physical hardware. Just for a quick refresher, those 2 steps were to make an assignment between your physical hardware and something on screen in layout mode, and then to give that on-screen control a mapping at the appropriate place. So if you wanted a mapping at this patch, you would select that patch and then make your mapping. So those 2 concepts are the big picture of how MainStage can give you really great sounds and a great level of control for live performance. But the thing to note is that it doesn't matter how great MainStage is on that side if you're not confident in how MainStage is actually going to perform for you, or if you're not sure how to find the work that you've done later. Yesterday, or 2 days ago rather, we talked about how to save your concert. So you go to File and Save. And if you watched lesson 2, you'll remember that I had you add a couple of files to your favorites bar, the MainStage folder, and then also the Audio Music Apps folder. If you're not familiar with how to do that, then you may have missed lesson 2, or you maybe weren't paying close enough attention. So go back and check out lesson 2 towards the end for a review on how to add the MainStage folder and the Audio Music Apps folder to your favorites bar in Finder. The reason you do that is so that when you save files out of MainStage, it's not a long process to save them to the correct place. Because if you're not saving them to the right place, then you're going to be like I was with files on your desktop, patches in the cloud, in Dropbox, in documents. I had 3 individual folders, all labeled patches on different places in my computer with absolutely no rhyme or reason to when I saved patches to any of those places. So today, the very first thing we're going to talk about is staying organized. At the end of lesson 2, we already told you where to save your concerts. There's also a recommended place to save your patches, and that is to the Patches folder within Audio Music Apps. Really quickly, let me show you how to save a patch. Like I said, we've got our concert file open from yesterday that you can download right below this video. To save a patch, all you do is select it in your patch list, and if you want to rename it, you can. We'll name this Second Greatest Patch Ever. And then with that patch selected, you can hit Command-E on your keyboard, and it's going to open up this export dialog box. This is where you can export patches. Now, mine, by default, is automatically saving to where I recommend, so I'm going to act like it took me somewhere else. So you're going to click on Audio Music Apps from your favorites bar, and then you want to choose this Patches folder that is within Audio Music Apps. And then you're going to choose Instrument, and this is where you want to save all of your patches. Now, I like to add another layer of categorization within the instrument folder, and I like to organize by collection or by type of sound or even have a folder for song-specific patches. But you could save right here if you wanted to, or you could add another folder by hitting New Folder, and we'll just name it Starter Course Patches. It's really hard to type when you're trying to talk at the same time. Okay, I'm going to name this 2 because I actually already have a folder named Starter Course Patches. So I'm going to hit Create, and I could save it right here. Now, you might run into not having a Patches folder or not having an Instruments folder here, and this might be because you've never saved a patch before. On some systems, MainStage doesn't automatically create these folders until you first save a preset to them. So if you don't have a folder labeled Patches, or you're missing the folder inside of Patches labeled Instrument, then just hit New Folder, the appropriate level. So here within Audio Music Apps, you would hit New Folder and make a folder called Patches. Just note that it has to be spelled exactly like you see in this video. So the first letter is capitalized, Patches, capital I, Instrument. And then you'll be able to do this. So I'm going to go back here and select my Starter Course Patches 2 folder and hit Export. So now I could delete this patch out of my patch list by hitting Delete. And now if I wanted to bring it back into my concert, there's 2 ways I could do this. You can hit the Settings cog here in your patch list and choose Load Patch. And it will ask you where you'd like to import it from. And now it's going to default to the last place you saved a patch to. But if it didn't, you would just go to Audio Music Apps and choose Patches, Instrument, and then you would navigate to the appropriate folder and select that patch. You could even get more detailed if you wanted, and you could drag the Instrument patch folder over to your favorites as well if you commonly brought patches back into your concert this way. This isn't even my preferred way to bring a patch in unless I'm not sure what I'm looking for. If I kind of know what I'm looking for, then I'll just add a new patch by clicking the Settings cog and choosing New Patch, or by hitting the plus button right here. And when you have a patch selected, down in the inspector here, you'll see that we have a few tabs available to us. And you want to click on Patch Library, and then choose User Patches. And then you can click Instrument, and you'll see how this has some parallels to that file structure that I just showed you. So when we choose Instrument, we will see all of the folders that we had within that folder within Audio Music Apps are right here. So here's the Starter Course Patches 2 folder that we just created, and here is our second greatest patch ever. So when you save your patches according to the file structure that MainStage is designed to recognize, then you don't even have to open up Finder to find your patches again. You can just use the inspector down here to navigate to them, which is really handy and can actually save you a lot of time, especially if you're building set lists very often and you have a lot of patches that you need to be able to sift through. You can also drag and drop patches in your patch list to rearrange them. So if I wanted this second greatest patch ever to be at the top, I would click and drag above the classic electric piano and it would drop right in. So that's a little bit about where to save your patches. Now, let's see here. We're going to go to the second greatest patch ever, and we designed this electric piano preset the other day, and we added some reverb to it. So originally we had selected the Deluxe Modern preset from the channel strip library, but then we'd ended up modifying it a little bit by adding some reverb, so it sounds really nice. Let's say that we wanted to be able to save that channel strip specifically so that when we were designing patches in the future, we could really quickly reference it again. To do this, simply click on the setting area up here in the channel strip area and choose Save as Channel Strip Setting. Now, it's going to ask you where you want it to save, but by default, MainStage is going to try and save it to the correct folder, which is very similar to patches. You can see we're actually in Audio Music Apps here by default, Channel Strip Settings, Instrument, and then you can change the name of the channel strip. So we're going to name it Second Greatest EP Ever, and I'm going to choose Save. So that's going to change the name of the channel strip itself. You see it changed to Second Greatest EP Ever. If you wanted to change that again, you could just go to Attributes and type in ePiano, whatever you wanted to name it. But that's now the name of the channel strip setting. So the really great thing about doing this, I'm going to add a new patch, and then I'm going to add a channel strip, choose Instrument, hit Create, I'm going to go to the channel strip library. Then I'm going to click on User Channel Strip Settings, and it's going to be right there, second greatest EP ever. Now you can add subfolders within the channel strip settings as well if you'd like. I choose not to. I just have all of mine organized by song name or with a descriptor of the type of sound at the beginning. But having these channel strips and patches saved to the folder that MainStage automatically looks for them means that you can access them both without ever having to shift out of this window. You don't have to open Finder. You don't have to locate your files. You can just use the inspector, whether it's the channel strip library or the patch library, to be able to access them. So that's really, really helpful. So now that we've talked about how to stay organized as you design your files and save your presets and your patches, the next thing I want to address today really quickly is actual performance. And I'm not talking about how well you play or don't play. I'm talking about the performance of your computer, of your rig, using your MIDI controller or your hardware keyboard connected to your computer and then out either via the headphone output or via an audio interface. Now, there are some things that can go wrong that can cause you issues. You may remember I said in the very first lesson that because there are more variables with a software-based rig, your computer isn't designed exclusively to be used to play your keyboard sounds. You have to make sure that you pay attention that you're not pushing your computer too hard. And there's a few things to keep in mind. We've actually got some videos that we've put together that are more specific and really hone in on some of these concepts. The first is CPU usage. This represents how hard you are pushing your computer processor. There are different types of processors and different speeds, something we hinted at in Lesson 1 and we expound upon in the Gear Finder over on our website. But it is possible to push your CPU too hard, and when you do that, some symptoms will be audio dropping out or notes getting stuck, the audio sounding muffled or distorted without any explanation. And this can change per patch. If you had a patch that was nice and simple, then you might not run into any issues at all. But if your next patch had 8 or 10 different channel strips and they all used resources, it would be possible to push your computer too hard. You might not even realize it until it was too late. So it's really important to get a good handle on how to check your CPU usage and then also know what steps you can take to make sure that you never push your CPU too hard. Now, some of you might already be comfortable with this concept or familiar with it, and I didn't want to take too much time in this video talking about it, especially when I've already got a more in-depth video about CPU usage that we've produced. So right below this video, there's a link to watch the CPU usage video. So if you have questions about CPU or if you ever run into any issues with CPU usage down the road, just head back to this page or search over on our website for CPU usage, and you'll be able to check out that more in-depth video. The next thing that's really important to consider as you're working on your live performance rig is the fact that sometimes things might actually go wrong or things might be behaving a little bit oddly or erratically. More often than not, it's either related to what I just talked about, CPU usage being too high, or it's related to your MIDI hardware acting up, malfunctioning, or maybe not being connected quite right. Sometimes if you have multiple MIDI devices connected at once, they can send conflicting messages that can make your equipment seem like it's been haunted or possessed by demons. But there's some things that you can do, some tools that you need in your toolkit to be able to quickly diagnose what might be going wrong so that you can fix it and not have it be a big issue and then get back to playing. We produced an entirely separate video about MIDI troubleshooting that lays out how you can quickly analyze what's going on, eliminate as many possible problems as possible so that you can isolate really quickly what the problem might actually be so that you can fix it. So the link to that video is right below this one as well. It's a little bit too in-depth to include here, otherwise the video would have ended up a little bit longer today. So we decided to include the CPU video and the MIDI troubleshooting video. There's links to both of them right below this lesson. And then there's one other concept that's really important. MainStage has some features that seem like a good idea in theory. They actually end up causing some headaches for live performance. And one of the most common culprits of this is MainStage's autosave functionality. If you go to Preferences here in MainStage, go to General Preferences. Autosaving is right down here at the bottom. What autosave is you can choose that every minute, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes,
or every 30 minutes, MainStage will automatically save your concert file, so that if your computer accidentally crashed or if you stepped away and your computer ran out of battery, you wouldn't lose your progress. That sounds like a good idea, but the problem is that every time that save cycle kicks in, it pushes your computer really hard. MainStage is basically doing two things at once. If you happen to be playing keys at that moment, MainStage wouldn't be focused on just playing keys. It would also be focused on backing itself up and saving your entire concert. So oftentimes, MainStage users run into big issues with every minute my sound gets really funky on the minute and I can't figure out why, or every 5 minutes out of nowhere a key will get stuck or my computer will sound totally different for about 5 seconds. And it's because of this autosave cycle. So I recommend leaving that set to never and then just getting in the habit of hitting Command S on your keyboard, which is the shortcut for save. Now, I do have a longer video where I talk a little bit more about autosave and how it actually affects your computer. So we're also going to link to that video right below this one. So there's 3 videos for you to check out, maybe just a little bit of homework for you between today's lesson and tomorrow. And of course, like I've said before, you can bookmark any of these lesson pages so that you can always come back and revisit the resources here in each lesson.
All right, that wraps up lesson 4 of the MainStage starter course. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to know the variables that affect how reliable MainStage can be. Once you understand those variables, then you're going to be confident that you can set up your MainStage rig to not strain your system too hard and actually give you reliable performance. Tomorrow's lesson, lesson 5 of the MainStage starter course, our final day, is a really great video that's full of really practical information you're going to want to have in your tool belt. We're going to talk about how to apply extra polish to your sounds so that they actually translate in a live room through a sound system the way that they do when you're working at home with headphones or through your studio monitors. This is a trouble spot that so many new MainStage users run into. You'll design your sounds at home and you think that they sound great, and then you go plug into your sound system and your sound person really doesn't give you good feedback. The volume levels are all over the place, the EQ is muddy or too bassy. So I'm going to give you a couple of things that you can make sure that you do when you're designing your sounds so that they actually translate when you go to perform live. It's going to be a really great video, super practical, and once you learn a few of these concepts, you're going to be able to apply them to your patch designs from here on out. So make sure that you check your email tomorrow and join us for lesson 5. We'll see you tomorrow.